cross-table lateralists. I am your host, and I am not a radiology technician. Nope, I'm a technologist, and I've been in this field long enough to know that just because you came into my emergency room at 2 a.m. with a chronic back pain times 6 years does not mean the x-ray should be stat. This is the Radiologic Technologist podcast for Rad Tech by Rad Tech. Thanks for listening.
Today I'll be talking to Dr. Rebecca Marsh. She is a medical physicist, PhD from University of Texas.
I just realized everybody is here to party.
Greetings and welcome, fellow barium inimists, fluoroscopists, and cross-table lateralists. I am your host, and I am not a radiology technician. Nope, I'm a technologist, and I've been in this field long enough to know that just because you came into my emergency room at 2 a.m. with a chronic back pain times 6 years does not mean the x-ray should be stat. This is the Radiologic Technologist podcast for Rad Tech by Rad Tech. Thanks for listening. Today I'm excited to have the equivalent of Robin Leach with live. Today I'm excited to have the equivalent of
I just realized everybody is here to party.
Greetings and welcome, fellow barium inimists, fluoroscopists, and cross-table lateralists. I am your host, and I am not a radiology technician. because you came into my emergency room at 2 a.m. with a chronic back pain times 6 years does not mean the x-ray should be stabbed. This is the Radiology Technologist podcast for Rad Tech by Rad Tech. Thanks for listening.
Hey, lady, you call him Dr. Jones.
Oh yes, he's living in one of
Hey, lady, you call him Dr. Jones. Hey, lady.
I just realized everybody is here to party.
Greetings and welcome, fellow barium inimists, fluoroscopists, and cross-table lateralists. I am your host, and I am not a radiology technician. Nope, I'm a technologist, and I've been in this field long enough to know that just because you came into my emergency room at 2 a.m. with a chronic back pain times 6 years does not mean the x-ray should be stabbed. This is the Radiologic Technologist podcast for Rad Tech by Rad Tech. Thanks for listening.
You call him Dr. Jones. Hey, lady, you...
Hello everyone, welcome to another live Q&A session. Let's change over the music here. That's one of my favorite intros from when I did some podcasts, and I still have it. I still like it. And then there's also the Indiana Jones quote. You call him Dr. Jones. That is actually a throwback to a prior radiology manager that I used to have back in the day, Scott Schaefer. He was an MRI tech who became a radiology administrator in Arizona at the old Mesa General. And Scott was one of the best directors I've had. What are we listening to today? Let's put on a little, I don't know, what's disco sounding like? We're going to have some lunch here and answer some questions real quick and see what a lunchtime live Q&A looks like on here. Now, hopefully, that's not too loud in the background. If it is, let me know in the comments. So we can move that over now. Scott. I've had many radiology directors over the years. Scott was one of the best. Scott's no longer with us. He had cancer. We're not exactly sure. I think it was from the cigars he smoked, but we'll never know. But what I learned from Scott, I went to him one day and I said, hey man, like a year and a half into it, hey man, am I doing a good job or what? I don't ever hear anything from you. And he kind of smiled and looked at me and said, hey, if you're not getting called into my office, you're doing all right. and for a while, I thought, I don't know if I want to be governed that way. I don't know if I want to be managed that way. I want somebody that tells me the good with the bad, right? Not just says, hey, if you're not in my office getting in trouble, shut up. What are you talking about? Quit complaining. You're doing good. And I didn't appreciate it at first until I had the managers, the directors, all they would do is complain all the time and never say anything good. Scott never complained, did his own thing, let us technologists do our own thing. And I wish he was still around. That still to this day remains one of my most favorite jobs that I had. I was a night shift technologist doing x-ray, CT, and ultrasound. A little 30-bed hospital. It was beautiful. Today's episode is going to be brought to you courtesy of Cotton Candy Bang. This is my afternoon unofficial, right? They're not a sponsor. I wish. But it's my afternoon pick-me-up. I got to get some caffeine in there to get it going. I hopped on today, particularly, let me get to this. I should probably just do it on my phone. Might be easier. I got another email. I answered 3 emails yesterday on a video, but then I got another one. Let me hop over to my inbox. I got another confirmation that I'll be speaking in May in New Orleans. The HCP Radiology Conference will be going on in New Orleans second week in May. I can give you dates when I get it confirmed, but I'll be talking about burnout because we're all burning out, right? And I'll be talking about leadership standard work, which is a long term for putting the power into the hands of the technologists to take care of the workplace instead of just being dictated to. So I'm out there advocating for you guys, trying to get things under your control and to get you some respect and talk about burnout and make all these are conferences, these are administrative conferences, so these are directors and managers and supervisors from all over the country, and I'm going to be talking to them about 13 different things that burn the technologists out, 2 ways to remedy each one, and some other details along those lines. What does burnout look like, that kind of thing. So I got an email here from BJ, and he says, hey Ron, I'm hearing that music, so let me back that down a little bit. That doesn't really sound like disco either, does it? What's epic? Doesn't sound like epic to me. I've yet to get comfortable with anything on here. Either it's banging too hard or not enough. I'm an old school, I mean, I like a lot of different music, but I'm an old school house techno, 160 beats per minute kind of, that's what I like. Elevator, there's some trance. Let's see what we can get out of trance. A little slower than I like, but back that down down. That's at 9%. Let's leave it there. So the email says, "Hey Ron, I'm currently starting my second." There's always somebody that wants to text me right when I get ready to do these. I will answer that, and then I will hop back over. VJ, "Hey Ron, I'm currently starting my second semester." When I open the, see if there's any comments. Different venue for me today.
I'm starting my second.
Trying to jump in here and do different things. Down here. Come on. So I'm also, the new project is, oh hey, Allison's on. Glad I was able to catch you. I'm about to start my commute for clinic, so I won't be able to chat live. Can you tell me if people with certain have specific personality traits? I know it's early. I'm only in my second semester. I wanted to see what would be a good fit for me beyond X-ray. Also looking at the bachelor's degree for admin. As always, certain personalities match with it. Okay, valid enough. I'm about to start my commute, so I won't be able to chat live. Okay, so you're still going to be able to listen. So VJ, I'm going to put you on hold for just a minute. That was an email question. I'm going to jump over to Allison because she's on her commute and listening right now. Hoping that music's not too loud, but I got to have some background noise. So, Allison, so your basic question is, do different, yeah. So, I do think that's a little loud. Sorry if I'm squirreling a little bit here. I need to figure out how to get this stuff consistent every time. All right, that's 6%, I believe. Bear with me. 4%, fine. Okay, whatever. Here's what I've noticed over my 20 plus years in radiology when it comes to different types of personalities in different modalities. And I've got to be PC about this, right? Because I could say things that I feel are my observations, but may not sound very nice. Gosh, now I'm thinking of all the wrong things to say. Let's generalize. X-ray is good for people that can handle a large variety of different issues, because X-ray techs have to go all over the place. You have to go at a moment's notice. You have to go to the OR, to the ER, to the floor, you cover outpatients and that can walk and other people that are paralyzed, and you just have to be able to do fluoro procedures and general procedures and stitching with spine work and outpatient. I mean, it's just all these things. X-ray techs are the most undervalued, underrated employee in the hospital, if you ask me, because we have to do so many different things, and it's just expected of us. But let's stay on track. CT personality, CT people like a faster pace, without a doubt. CT techs have to be able to move quickly, think quickly. You kind of boom, boom, boom. You can be a trauma junkie. You can be a trauma junkie in X-ray and CT, because in traumas, you know, the gory gunshot wounds and car accidents, the X-ray techs are going to get most likely called to the ER to shoot that portably, and you're going to see it, and you're going to be standing right there, front line, and everybody really, I mean, the doctors are going to do their thing, and the nurses are going to do their thing to get these patients stabilized and medications in them and lines started and all that stuff. But in a lot of cases, the doctors have to know either the situation of the lungs, or if a line placement is in an appropriate location, or an intubation is in an appropriate location. And X-ray has to have the chutzpah to push through everyone and say, I'm X-ray, I'm next, get out of my way. Let me put this plate under the patient. Let me shoot my X-ray. Let me get out of here now so I can process it, whatever. But CT also has to deal with those traumas, because those traumas come to CT a lot for quick information. So the beauty about CT is you can get all this information in like 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. Where MRI gives you better detail, but it can take you an hour. I mean, MRIs are getting better and they're getting faster, and they do have fast protocols for brains now that are, I think sub 15 minutes, maybe even sub 10 minutes. But when you really want to go to MRI for your detailed views, where CT is for your down and dirty, your quick and get it in and out. And so you have to be okay with the gory stuff to be in CT. MRI, not so much. I mean, you will perhaps get some gory stuff in MRI, but not very much. MRI is really your meat and potatoes, ortho stuff, spine stuff, brains, abdomens. You're not typically throwing, you are throwing a lot of, ICU type patients in MRI, but that's not a trauma type patient. I'm talking open wound, blood, that kind of stuff. So when we're talking with you, Allison, about personalities that match modalities, CT is your faster pay. You can't be, I'll say lazy, but you can't be lazy in any modality. But if you spend a week in MRI and spend a week in CT, you can't tell me that MRI doesn't sit on their butts quite a bit, because they have to. Because once you put the patient on the table in MRI, you go back to your control room and sit there and go through sequence after sequence, and you lean forward and press your space bar to say, okay, you're going to have to stop moving, or we're going to have to start over. And that's pretty much it until the whole thing's done, an hour later, 2 hours later, and then you go back in there in MRI. CT, most of the time it's you putting them on the table. You may have help, if it's a trauma patient from the ER staff, but you put them on the table, you get the bed all the way in the gantry, you go back to the control room, set up your protocol. Usually you do that ahead of time because you know they're coming, but if you don't, you got to set up your protocol, and then you got to scan the patient. Everybody, traumas, they run into your room and they stand behind you and they look at your screen and they go, what do you see, what do you see, what do you see? Right? So you're not only trying to just do the job and get the scan done correctly, but you've got people, on both sides. Oh, look, oh, what's that? Oh, I think that's something, get out of my way. But you have to have the kind of personality that wants to jump and get things done quickly in CT. MRI, not so much. MRI, you need to be methodical. MRI, you have to make sure every patient is scrutinized before they even get in the scanner. You have a form to go over that asks them all these questions about prior surgeries and implants and prior issues, claustrophobia issues. Are you medicated today? Are you, all that kind of stuff. And you have to be methodical, more so in MRI than you do in CT. Not because it's not important in CT, because it is. But you have to do a quick turn and burn kind of a scan in CT to get them back to the ER where they can get more stable. Where in MRI, and there's plenty of CTs that are run-of-the-mill, normal, slow down, do your thing, take forever, whatever you want to do. But you're not going to get a lot of traumas in MRI. Now, your big trauma centers may argue that. They may go, well, I get a lot of them. Well, you're at a trauma center. Your ER docs like to use your MRI for certain things. Maybe other facilities aren't so big into it, whatever. Every place is different. This isn't a one-size-fits-all answer. But your MRIs have to be more methodical in making sure that the patients are safe going into the scanner, and everybody else around them. If there's a respiratory therapist with them, you got to make sure they're cool. If there's a nurse with them, you got to make sure they're cool. Interpreter, anybody that's with that patient to help out, you got to check them, be methodical and thorough to make sure they're cleared to go into zone 4. And so MRI techs tend to be more, I wouldn't say laid back, but they're definitely more methodical. Ultrasound, I would say, is for people that are super inquisitive. People, because you'll sit there, you sit with an ultrasound tech and listen to them as they bring a patient into the room, and they will ask all kinds of questions. Where's your pain hurt? How long have you had it? Have you had any surgeries? And they'll be scanning, and they may see, maybe a gallstone, and they'll go, do you ever have pain after you eat fatty foods? They're starting to investigate potential issues with what they're seeing, and they're super inquisitive and want to know everything they can about the patient to help correlate it with the images they're taking, because the dirty little secret about ultrasound that the public doesn't know or understand or hasn't really just been educated on is that the radiologists, or whoever your interpreting doctor is, they will only see the images that the ultrasound tech takes. So in other words, if the patient has a gallstone and they're in there for a thyroid scan, the interpreting doctor is never going to know that there was a gallstone in that patient, because all the ultrasound tech did was evaluate the thyroid. Now, of course, they're not supposed to be down in the abdomen for a thyroid exam, but on a CT scan where you're doing a chest, abdomen, pelvis and covering basically most of the body, it doesn't matter what the CT tech sees, the doctor's going to see it all. And that's what's so good about CT, is all the information is captured and quickly. On an ultrasound, the only information captured is what the ultrasound tech specifically, and they may even see something with their probe, but if they don't click the image button and capture it, the doctor will never know it's there. And so there's a lot of pressure put on ultrasound techs to make sure they understand pathology. I mean, more so, you can be a CT tech and not know what a ruptured aneurysm looks like. It's helpful, and once you see one, you know what it is, but it's not typical for a CT tech to scan a chest, abdomen, pelvis, see an aneurysm, and then call the radiologist, say there's an aneurysm. You can do that, and it happens, and techs that are good enough do that, or they watch for the report and make sure it was on there, because 4 eyes are better than 2. Any radiologist worth his weight in salt will tell you that, but it's not a requirement for that CT tech to point that out. The requirement for the CT tech is to capture an accurate, high quality image and give it to the doctor and let him figure it all out. That's not the same for a sonographer. A sonographer or ultrasound tech has to know what they're looking at and know, oof, that's a thing I need to capture, and give that to the doctor. And then at the end, the sonographer has to fill out a report and kind of put down what they saw. The measurements of the common bile duct, or whatever, was it echogenic, multiple foci, all these things. The sonographer has to write almost an interpretation report. We don't call it that. We make sure we don't call it that. But we write down what we see on the report, and then we hand the report and the images off to the radiologist and basically tell them what we saw, and then they read it, and that's pretty much their report. But you'll find that sonographers are very inquisitive and methodical. So that's what I have to say about ultrasound. And ultrasound sits a lot. So if you're like me and you don't like standing on your feet all day, I couldn't stand. I liked the OR because I liked watching the blood and guts. I like to see how you fixed it, how you fixed a problem. But I didn't like standing there on my feet all day long. I just don't like it. And some people say, well, I'm allowed to sit down. Well, great. Good for you. I wasn't. But ultrasound, you're sitting 90% of the time. Your patients may come down from the floor or from the ER in a gurney. So you just move yours out of the way and roll theirs right in, and you do the exam in their own bed, or you go mobile and do it in their bed. But typically there's not a lot of moving patients around, not as much anyway, for ultrasound as there is for like CT or x-ray. So that's what I would say about ultrasound is you have to be inquisitive, you have to be thorough, you have to care about the quality of the images you're turning in, because those doctors are relying on you to give them what to look at. Where an x-ray of a chest, as long as you just capture the whole chest on there and have a decent technique, and that's not even mattering much anymore with computers doing all that post-processing for you, but as long as you captured all, the doctor is going to take a look and see what he sees. Ultrasound, he only sees what you give him. And then you look at nuclear medicine. Nuclear medicine, the nuke med techs that I have known over the years have always been very, very calm demeanor, and also methodical, and they're good critical thinkers, because they're having to think through dosages and calculate when to do their images, or after the delivery of the isotopes. They have to be very cognizant of what's going on around them. Like, they give patients certain things that then they have to tell the patient, you can't go to a movie for the next 48 hours or something, because you're going to be putting off a low level of radiation. And so they have to be cognizant of what happens after the exam. They have to be cognizant of what they're giving the patient. They have to either give them their isotopes orally, or they mix them into food. and so they have to prepare ahead of time and let the kitchen know I need 3 orders of scrambled eggs by certain time or whatever. And I have just always found nuclear medicine technologists to be very, very calm, and it's almost like they're thinking about everything before they're saying it, analyzing the options. And so I would say they move around enough. Their patients do stay on the table quite a bit. And I'll admit, I have never really hung out all day with the nuke med tech. I've just kind of popped in and out on studies. But that's my overall on the personality of nuke med techs. And of course, it's really up to the person, right? I could say you have to be a go-getter to be a certain type of tech, but if you can make it work in your own way, maybe you're not a go-getter and you can find a night shift at a small hospital where you don't have to be a go-getter, you know. I'm not saying any one person can't perform a certain role, because you can. I did an article on my blog not too long ago about being an introvert. One of the questions I got was, I'm an introvert. I don't really care to talk to people. Am I going to be, any good at my clinical site, because people are wanting to talk a lot to me when there's downtime, and I really don't have anything to say. And so I talked to that person and sent them some links and videos about making conversation and general conversation and that kind of stuff. But introverts, extroverts, you're going to see all kinds at your clinical rotations. You're going to see your happy people and your cranky people. You're going to have your new people that are still on their honeymoon at their job and think it's awesome. And you're going to have your 20-year veterans that are just crass and nothing's like it used to be and blah, blah, blah. So I'm just kind of giving you generalities, right? If I knew what kind of personality you were, Allison, maybe I could help steer you a little bit more. But I would say IR matches OR a lot. IR is going to be on their feet all day. They have to be quick thinkers because they have to know what to hand to the radiologist next. They have to think ahead. You have to capture images and whatnot. IR people are going to want to be always busy because you're going to be on call all the time and you're going to get called in all the time. Some of us like to just do our 8 to 5 and go home. And some of us like healthcare. Like I used to kind of be a call whore. I always wanted to call. I would take everybody's call. I would be on call. I used to be on call at 3 different hospitals at one time. It was the same system, so it's not like I was bouncing around, between different systems. But that's a story for another day. But you want to make some serious money, take call at 3 hospitals at the same time. So IR is a lot like OR, a lot of standing, a lot of forward thinking. You got to know your instruments very well. If they ask for something, you can't fumble around, and you can't be a clumsy person either. You have to be careful with you don't want to drop instruments. You don't want to be sticking yourself. I've seen that happen. I had a particular x-ray tech that got stuck 2 or 3 times within about a year and a half. We had to have some talk about that. But that's IR. Mammo and DEXA kind of go together. Sometimes DEXA goes into nuclear medicine, but DEXA is a more simpler form of x-ray where you're just x-raying for osteoporosis or osteopenia, and you're just doing like a forearm or a hip or something. If you haven't seen it, there's just this table patients lay on. You put a crosshair on a certain part of the anatomy, and it does the scan super quick. Not a lot of. There is an actual certification for it through the ART, which still surprises me. But and you can do that all day long. You can do DEXA scans all day long. It's the simplest thing. It's like doing panoramics for dentists. You just do the jaw all day long. That's all you do. But DEXA would be a relaxed atmosphere. Everybody pretty much is a walkie-talkie, maybe wheelchair. And it's scheduled 8 to 5. There's no call. There's never a stat DEXA. But Mammo is more involved. The Mammo techs I have known like to get into the education. They like to be educated. They like to take a lot of classes. They like to understand what they're looking at. They like to be able to call out speculations and all kinds of densities. And Mammo techs, the ones that I have known, have always seemed to be very, very into their craft. Not that other techs aren't, but Mammo techs they're in it to help women. They're in it to get the right picture. They are just really pro mammo, if that makes sense. Who am I leaving out? There's PET, which is another version of Nuke Med, so same kind of thing there. Can't think of any others. If you think of any, let me know. And I saw that Allison went to our Facebook group and posted a request for videos that I've done in the past or articles that I've written in the past about the different modalities. You can tell my computer's going super slow today. I installed a new crypto miner on it a couple of weeks ago, and I've been mining Ethereum on the side, because when my computer's sitting, I figure it might as well be making me some money. And this miner that I'm using, Kudo miner, doesn't want to shut off when you want it to shut off. I manually hit disable, and it'll re-enable itself, which could be a good thing because it wants to make you money. But the bad thing is it gobbles up all your resources on your computer and makes everything super slow. So I was on the site, and I posted books. I posted several right here. Allison said, can you drop a video that touches on advanced modalities? I'm assuming you already have one on YouTube. I just can't find it. That's funny because I have a video on just about everything, and there's like over 200 videos. And then there's the blog where there's just over a couple hundred articles about things, podcasts, study guides, you name it. But so I posted, there's a couple of general videos that I did, advice on multimodality training and which modality should I advance to after x-ray. I didn't go back and listen to them again, but I'm probably saying something similar to the training you get and the pay you get and call, how much call and all that kind of stuff. I don't think I talk about personality traits. This is the first time I really talk about personality traits. So thanks for the topic. But then I went on to list some replies about not necessarily modalities per se, but about different jobs you can do in radiology. So I did do a dedicated on the CT tech and radiation therapy, and there you are. And oh, there's 4 more. See how slow my computer's going? The radiation safety officer. So that's something you can actually do on top of what you're already doing. It's usually someone in the department that is the RSO, and it's your job to keep track of the badges. It's your job to file all the appropriate reports and keep them on file for when you get inspected by JACO or the state. But the RSO is like a couple weeks program in California, the one I know about anyway. You go to it for 2 weeks, you pass the test, you're an RSO, you make more money. Congratulations. The RRA, a lot of people don't know that's out there, the Registered Radiologic Assistant or Radiologist Assistant. That's a way cool job. Here's a video about ultrasound school, because I went through ultrasound school. I talk a little bit about PACS, because a lot of people don't know that with our knowledge as technologists, you can get a job as a PACS administrator, and it's a double win. It's a win-win, because not only will you learn or know everything about the computer system, but you know how it relates to the images that we take as technologists. So anyway, there you go. I'm just kind of showing off the group, because if you don't know about it already, there's, I think we have up to 4,000 members in there so far, and you can ask anything, and you can even send it to me to post anonymously. If you're having problems at your clinical site about jerky text and you want to know what to do, send it to me and say, hey, can you post this anonymously in the group? And people will come out of the woodwork to answer these questions. People share their books here after they graduate. They unload them on here. Some people give them away. You just pay for shipping. So you no longer need them. Make an offer. They're collecting dust. So I want to make sure I get everybody's questions. I kind of get sidetracked on the group there. Where do I go? I go over here. Allison, so I had to pull over. Okay, Nog, I'll get to you in just a second. Let me finish Allison. I'm the president of my class. That doesn't surprise me because you also got that ASRT leadership deal too, right? President of my class, 4.0 student. As you know, I got a position in the Student Leadership Development Program and I've been a hairstylist for 20 years. So talking isn't my issue. Oh, so you're pulling over to let me know what kind of personality you have. I'm mostly looking at CT if I decide to acquire one after school. So yeah, CT. So if I had to pick a favorite, it would be really hard to choose between ultrasound and CT for me. I did MRI for a while. MRI was annoying to me. The sounds. I don't care for repetitive noises. You know, for those of us with kids, you went through the phase where your kid said, "Mom, mom, 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 mom." That would drive me insane. And of course, moms learn how to tune it out. So the kid will just go on for hours. Mom, mom, mom. Well, that's your MRI scanner, right? For 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And then it switches to another noise for 30 minutes. And call me crazy, but I think sitting that close to that big of a magnetic source, I felt like by the end of my shifts, I felt dizzy. I felt like a little, and it wouldn't last all night, but I would leave and I'd feel like something was just kind of off. But I don't have any, proof of that. But if you like to talk and you're good with people, of course, the old joke is that means you absolutely cannot be a radiologist, right? Because I don't know if I've shared the story, but there was a doctor in residency that I went to my church a long time ago, and he was giving a talk, and he said, I've got to decide where I want to go for my specialty. I'm about done with everything else. And I ran into him. Of course, I'm all pro radiology, right? I ran into him afterwards, and I said, "Hey, have you considered radiology?" And he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "No, I like patients." And what did that mean? That means there's this stereotype that radiologists don't like patients because they sit in their dark cave all day, and if you go in there to ask them a question, they grumble. What do you want? You couldn't just call me. Why do you got to interrupt me? So if you like to talk and you like people, you'll fit into any modality. But if you want to be constantly moving, which it sounds like you're a type A person, CT would be a good fit for you. You're going to max out at like $38 an hour after a while. Depending on where you're at. If you're in California, they may go into the 50s. I don't know. But you are going to max. There's no advancement inside CT. In other words, like an ultrasound, you become a general ultrasound tech. You can maybe learn vascular and earn a little bit more if you're at the right place. Maybe not. Maybe they already make you do vascular. But if you go on to learn echo sonography and just do the heart, you will make more money. And then you can subspecialize even further into pediatric echo and make even more money. And then I always forget what the other one's called for the little big tiny babies. Neonatal echo sonography. So every step on that ladder is quite a bit more money. And you want to talk about in demand. Pediatric and neonatal echo sonography. I think I knew 6 people in Phoenix who could do it. So they could write their own checks. But if you like talking and moving around and high energy, I think you might go nuts in MRI. You might go nuts in nuke med. You might go nuts in, of course, mammo, being in there with 99% women, because there is a male mammo tech somewhere. I've heard about it, and it's not against the law or whatever. It's just weird. I probably shouldn't have said that, but you guys are going to be talking to everybody all the time in mammo. So, but I think CT would be a good choice, and you should be able to get to it relatively quickly. That's one of the things I talk about in my video about how to apply to X-ray school and what to ask. Interviews oftentimes will end with them saying, "Do you have any questions for us?" And one of the things I always recommend is you should ask about clinical rotations, because you have 2 types of administrators out there. You have the type that says, I only hire from outside. I want somebody that already knows what they're doing and can hit the ground running, versus I hire from within because it's a sense of building my own team up, and that creates more loyalty and happiness with the team. And that's my side of the argument, is you should always train from within when possible, because that's why people work their butts off for you in X-ray for however long, is because they hope to get somewhere else. And if you bring in people from the outside, maybe they know CT, but they don't know your EMR. They don't know the layout of your hospital. They don't know where everything is. They don't know who the problem doctors are and how to deal with them. and all the intricacies that your x-ray tech would have known if you had promoted them. But that's a whole nother, I got a talk on that, I got a blog post on that, a video on that. But I think Mr. Allen is saying, are you saying my music's a little bit loud? It's at like 6%. Or am I loud? Maybe you're saying I'm loud. I'll back down my mic if you tell me I'm loud. Let me know. So Allison, there you go. I also have articles about bachelor's versus master's. So obviously I went all the way to the doctorate. So I've got posts and videos about what that means. You can actually get into x-ray with just a certificate and not even get an associate's, but most places are doing associates now. So I've got articles and videos that talk about the difference in associates versus bachelor's versus master's and so on, and the fact that it doesn't really bring you much more money as you move up those educational scales. It helps you get into administration, which helps you get more money. So that's it for Allison. Nick Nog, how would I go about cross-training in Ctrm Iowa while in school to become a Rad Tech? Well, absolutely. So I think I talk about that in my my intro video that's on my channel. Five reasons to start a career in radiography. I talk about how, and this goes all the way back. I have another post and video about how to choose your clinical sites. And for some of you, it's going to be too late, but you can actually investigate your clinical sites before you get them. And some schools let you choose your clinical site. Others make you go to certain ones. Other ones, like here in Southern Idaho, you only have a few choices, so you just rotate through whatever's there. But I chose clinical sites that I knew allowed weekend clinical hours, because not everybody does that. And they allowed you to stay pretty late, like to 11 or 12 o'clock at night, when most of them say we don't want students here past 10 or whatever. So I chose one that did weekends so that I could work during the week and stuff like that. But you can ask about the clinical instructors at the sites in a professional way. Like you could say, what are their credentials? How long have they been a CI? And it makes it look like you're just asking about who's going to be teaching you. But one of the other things you're doing is you're finding out, is my clinical instructor for x-ray also CT licensed? And then you compare that against, is this a 30-bed hospital? Which means that person that's x-ray CT licensed may be doing both, probably is doing both. So that tells you that while your clinical instructor is training you on x-ray during your clinical rotations, there's a good chance you might get to watch them do CTs when you're not doing x-rays, and that's what happened to me. My clinical instructor on the weekends, there was two guys. One was x-ray CT trained, one was x-ray only, and basically it was meant for one to do x-ray and one to do CT, but the CT guy would help out in x-ray if he had to, but he didn't want to. And they made that CT tech my clinical instructor, so he would show me how to do the x-rays, but then he would also show me how to do the CTs. And by the time I graduated x-ray school, I was hired at that site as a CT tech. So I came right out of school, right out of x-ray school, being hired as a CT tech, and this was 2005. Nothing's changed between now and then that would not allow that. But oddly enough, the other location, the other clinical rotation that I had that I also got hired on at, I hired on in x-ray on the night shift. So I took, I think I took Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, something like that, at one clinical site doing x-ray. And I filled in the rest of my days at the other place doing x-ray and CT. And when it came time to apply for CT at the x-ray job, they refused me. They said you have to work 5 years in the x-ray department before we'll let you move up. And of course, I quit. I wrote them a letter and I said, if that's the way you're going to be and you're going to stunt my growth professionally, then I'm leaving. And he laughed. You can't do that. You won't do that. Ha ha, I'm paying you. And I was around $27 an hour as an x-ray tech back in 2005. But that's because I got hired at $17 an hour. I took the night shift, which was like another $5 an hour. And then that was on the weekends, which was like another $3 an hour. So I took the crap of the crap. I was on the shift that nobody wanted. So you have to pay that person well. But I didn't hesitate. I sent him a letter and I said, I know CT. I do CT. I'm licensed in CT. If you're telling me I can't apply, even an interview, I'm walking. Oh, you can't do that, blah, blah, blah. And I did. And I left. And that was the end of that. So the answer to your question is yes. You can get cross-trained in the right situation. You will not go to a large hospital for your x-ray rotation and get any CT exposure. You may not even see the CT people. They'll probably be in another part of the department. You won't even see them unless they call for boost help or something. You're just in there to help move patients. So you have to pay attention to where your clinical rotations are going to be to help decipher what you're going to be able to do at your clinical rotations. Do your research, because you don't want to end up, I know a girl that's a tech out in Wyoming who can't pass her ART boards. And when I started digging into that to see why, it was because she did her entire rotation at an outpatient clinic with walkie-talkies. And of course there could be, she could just be a poor test taker. That's a thing. Her school may not have prepared her well. But when you get pigeonholed into one type of location that doesn't have an OR, which means no C-arms, no ER, no traumas, you're going to get a really small picture of what you do as an x-ray tech compared to the whole picture. So just make sure you investigate, if it's not too late, your clinical rotations. Allison, Kate. Hey, Kate. Yeah, you shouldn't have. I mean, I don't know you personally, but it shouldn't be that hard to get into a sonography program. You have to wait. Sometimes there's 2 to 3 year waiting list for ultrasound. I kind of got lucky, and it was a rumor, but where I went back in Phoenix, there was always a 2 to 3 year waiting list for ultrasound school. And at that time, and this was around 2007, I believe, at that time you had to have an ancillary degree just to apply. You had to already be an x-ray tech or a physical therapist or a respiratory therapist or a nurse or a nuke med tech to apply for ultrasound. And same way for nuke med there. You had to be a licensed something else to apply for nuke med. You couldn't just walk in off the streets. And you can now, and that's the big difference between then and now. So I got lucky because I started looking at the application while I was at my x-ray clinicals and actually got in trouble. My CI, who I had other issues with, the CI didn't even say anything to me. He said something to my instructor about how I had all my ultrasound school applications spread out on the counter during my clinicals. And I said to my teacher, I'm like, what's wrong with that? It was downtime. There was nothing going on. And they said, well, give them the impression that you're focusing only on what you're doing there. And they want to see that you're 100% into what they're all about. And I do kind of get that. But I think it was petty to go to the school and complain that I was trying to better myself by filling out an application for ultrasound school. But it taught me that there are jerks like that out there that want to control you, but don't have the cojones to tell you to your face. They'll go crying to your instructor. So do what you're asked to do. And I've said it before, the schools care more about their clinical sites than they do about the students. Because if they lose a student, they got 50 more lined up. If they lose a clinical site, there isn't a replacement. And they have to have the clinical site. So Kate, keep trying. Oh, what I didn't say was, so I applied to the ultrasound program. There was a wait list, but I think the rumor was there was a changing of the guard of the person running the ultrasound program. And the rumor was the wait list got lost. And I didn't even meet, here's another tip for you, I didn't even meet all the requirements to get into ultrasound school because there was a combined anatomy and physiology class that they required that I didn't have because my x-ray anatomy didn't count, and it was at a private school and the ultrasound school is a public school, so that stuff doesn't cross over. But the A&P that I had back in college at Arizona State was a separate anatomy from a separate physiology class. And what this ultrasound program wanted was a combined A&P. So I applied anyway. People always say, well, I can't apply to x-ray school because I have a family to take care of, or I have to work full time, there's no way, or it's all these excuses. And I always say, hey, just apply, because what if you don't get accepted? Then you didn't even give yourself the chance. So I applied to ultrasound knowing that I was missing something, and they contacted me and said, we have an opening, and we see that you are short on this one thing, but if you'll sign a contract with us that you'll finish that at some point during the 2-year program on the side through us, then we'll let you in the program and blah, blah, blah. And I got in. So I went straight from x-ray school to ultrasound school and finished that anatomy class during the ultrasound program. and came out with all three of those modalities because I'd learned CT in X-ray school. So ultrasound, you know, I wouldn't say it's any harder to get into than anybody else. Hang on just a second. Just a sec. So that's what happens is I get to doing these things and I say I'm only going to do it for a half an hour, and then I forget to go pick my kids up from school. So that was two of my daughters. I have 6 daughters, and that was two of them going, "Where are you?" I don't see the screen where it says how long I've been on, but at least 30 minutes. So, you know what I think I'll do? They're literally like right next door. They could totally walk, but I spoil them. So I've answered Kate and Nog and Kate. I'm just going to put you guys on a standby, and I'll be back in like 15 minutes. So hang in there. I'll be right back. Thanks for stopping by, and don't forget to hit the like button.
Bark, 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 bark. Bark, 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 bark. Bark, 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 bark. Bark, 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 bark. All right.
Well, it looks like I never muted the microphone, so there's that. Look at that bald head. I just got it all shaved today. Got the beard trimmed up. Went down to my favorite one-armed barber. He does a great job. I'm kidding. He has both arms. So Kate was saying Calgary, maybe Canada, only one tech school here, and I was told that last year 800 plus. Oh my gosh. That is insanity. We got too many down here. At one point, we literally had too many x-ray tech schools. They were pumping out so many techs that you couldn't get a job. Well, you could. That's an old argument. That was back when I was graduating. I think in Phoenix we had 7 schools. And people would say, you can't get a job, this isn't fair, when the truth was you didn't do very well at your clinicals. Or you just weren't willing to do part-time until a full-time opened up. I had 2 jobs right out of school when people were saying there were no jobs. Anyway, now I can address that email. It was from VJ. Hi Ron, I'm currently starting my 2nd semester in X-ray school and received an email about pitching in ideas for startup businesses. I remember one of your videos where you were thinking of starting a mobile X-ray company. I was wondering if this is a realistic idea for me to pitch, or is this idea more for people who have been in imaging field for 10 plus years? No, great question. Appreciate the ask. Anybody can do that. Here's the trick. Here's the basic fundamentals to a mobile radiography business. And I got to kind of understand and know how it worked because related back to my story where I was the weekend clinical student and I had an x-ray tech and a CT tech. The x-ray tech had been a part of a mobile x-ray company prior. And he was kind of schooling me, and I can't remember if he did his own or if he was thinking about doing his own because it's been almost 20 years now, but his name was Eric Harold, Eric with an A. Eric Harold now works for GE and travels and does applications. But for a mobile x-ray company, you one of the key parts is you have to find a radiologist that's willing to read your exams at a reasonable price. And x-rays, I think we were looking at $25 per x-ray back then, or 15. I mean, when you first hear that, you go, wow, that's all it costs to get an x-ray read. But x-rays just don't pay that much from the supply, from the vendor, from the insurance companies. So if they don't reimburse that much, you can't pay that much for a read. So you've got to find a radiologist who's willing to kind of read them on the side. And what you can do, so you can now buy mobile equipment that folds up pretty much like a suitcase and fits in your trunk. And I interviewed a gal, if you're interested in that. I interviewed the mobile x-ray tech in Hollywood. It was her job to go around and x-ray the movie stars. And the podcast is 1 hour and it's hilarious, the stuff she had to do. If you go into media from my blog and you scroll down to the podcast, newsletter, there's the newsletter. I haven't done the newsletter in over a year. There's the podcast. I'd only had 2 published that I actually sat down because it's a lot of work to edit an hour-long podcast. But X-rays of the rich and famous. I talked to Patricia Lynn, a mobile radiographer who gave up veterinary radiography to image the rich and famous of Beverly Hills. She shares lots of interesting stories, including who jumped out of windows, poolside x-rays, and more. I mean, she got paid in chocolate, expensive Russian chocolate that had liquor inside. She got tipped, which I don't know if you can do that anymore, or if you do get tipped, you don't want to tell anybody. But very interesting podcast about the life of a mobile radiographer who just drives around in a van all day. But I looked into it myself, which I must have mentioned according to his VJ's comment. You really just need a van or even a car with a decent trunk, and you can buy a portable x-ray machine. Let's see if I can even get that pulled up for you while I'm talking. But mobile x-ray machines fold up about the size of a briefcase or a suitcase, and they can have an extendable arm. Let's see if I can pop one out. You know, when you say mobile x-ray or portable x-ray, you think of those big clunky tanks in the hospitals. Let's see. I'll just throw this over here. So you know, you're used to these bigger. Here's a stream. You're used to seeing those. There's an old MX4. Is that what they were called? The old tanks. Carestream up here, but that's for hospital use. They have to have a much bigger battery in them to do a lot more exposures around the clock in a hospital. When you're talking dragging one out to a facility like a nursing home, here's a good example right here. Portable x-ray system. This whole thing collapses down into something you can kind of pull next to you like a suitcase, but it extends and the arm rotates. Here's another example. Well, this is an example here. But these smaller units are the kind that you can take with you to nursing homes and people's houses, their work. So that's the equipment. We talked about securing a doctor. So if you get one of these, you're going to have to get if you can get a DR, then you're still going to have to get some kind of a PAC system that ties into it so that you can pull up your studies, annotate them, whatever, and then you can send those over the internet to the radiologist, just like we do in a hospital. So the equipment you need is the portable machine with the cassettes and the PAC system, which there's even open source PAC systems that are free. If you do open source PACs, my computer's so slow. Kugel, an open source top 10 free open source PACs. There's 10 of them. So you just download them and start using them, but you know, you got to be careful because you don't get much support off of those. You can talk to some of the bigger ones and see about it. You know, there's enterprise level for the big hospitals, but they generally have a smaller office level that you can talk about. But those send your images to your radiologist, or they store on your own little computer, your own little server, and you give the radiologist access to log in and look at them. So that's probably the better method, unless you have a stat. Well, you can still do a stat. So what you do is let's say you get nursing homes. That's what I was looking at doing before COVID hit. Getting all the local nursing homes and just going out and doing the morning run, all those chest x-rays that have to be gathered, because you think about a nursing home has to have their resident put into a transport unit, a van, whatever, taken to the hospital. Sometimes it's an ambulance, which is $500, $1,000. They gotta be transferred to the hospital. Somebody has to get them off the truck at the hospital, take them to the radiology department, sit there while they get their x-ray, get them back to the transportation, get them back to the nursing home. And so there's a lot of costs involved for the nursing homes to provide x-rays outside of the facility. If you can bring your unit to the nursing home, you're saving them a ton of time and money and less risk for the patient, because getting them up and moving them out, if they slip and fall and break a hip or whatever, there's more damage that could have been avoided. So what you want to get for clientele is all your local SNFs and nursing homes and things like that. And then if you just generally advertise, you can go to people's houses. You just have to read up on the local laws and rules about radiation and you know, like you can't go to somebody's house and shoot an x-ray on mom with the kid sitting right next to them or whatever. You just have to investigate what applies to your particular location. But the generalities on a business is your equipment, which we talked about, your rad who's reading it, which you have to have an official read, and your clientele, which is general public or nursing homes or big businesses. For example, in Arizona, my friend Eric, it was his job to drive out to one of the mines once or twice a year, and all the miners would come out and stand in a line, and he would just do chest x-ray after chest x-ray after chest x-ray. And that was their kind of their annual or biannual physical exam. Part of their physical was to x-ray their lungs and make sure they weren't inhaling a bunch of crap out of the mines. So that kind of a contract can be fairly lucrative. Just keep in mind that x-rays don't bill a lot. The other thing you're going to want to check out in that line of work is what is billable. Obviously the exams are billable. If you go shoot an x-ray of the chest, you bill for the chest, but can you bill for the transportation fee? The fee to get there to shoot the x-ray and get back to your home office? Can you bill for it being a stat? Because you will be asked to go out and do things faster than normal, whether they call it stat or urgent or ASAP or whatever they want to call it. Because when I was checking it out, there was the fee for the exam, there was the fee for traveling to the location, and there was also an expediency fee or urgency fee for getting it done within, so many hours, 24 hours, whatever it was. And if you can piggyback all the fees on top of each other, then you stand to make a decent amount with that business. Now with COVID and everything, one of the reasons I decided not to go that route once COVID hit was because you would have to gown up and down at every patient, and you'd have to wipe down your equipment after every patient, and it would just be a nightmare trying to go from room to room to room during COVID. It's just not going to work. But once it starts to mellow out and they start to realize that the vaccines aren't really stopping the spread, and the vaccines don't keep you from being hospitalized, and there is no vaccine for Omicron, and there'll be 15 other variations within the next 2 years after Omicron. If all this finally lets loose and we can go back to business, mobile x-ray certainly has a place in our society, because not everybody has time to go to the hospital, and if you set up wellness clinics at the locations, at the major businesses, then all the employees can come out and get it done. And you can piggyback some stuff with that. If you know how to draw blood and you have a contract with a local laboratory, which I've done. I was a phlebotomist before I was an x-ray tech, and I used to have a mobile phlebotomy business. I called it Lab Line, and I set up a contract with a grocery store, and I would travel around to all those chains in that grocery store chain and set up on a Saturday, and I have a little, like a portable table with a couple of partitions for privacy, and I had my own requisitions that the lab provided with my name on the top, Lab Line on the top, and they would discount, like a CBC, they would give it to me for $5 or whatever. I would charge $10 or whatever. And so people just show up, pay you, you draw the blood, you spin it down, and then you transport it to the lab at the end of your shift or whatever. And that's a viable business. Same thing goes for x-ray. You can do the same, and ultrasound, you can do that too. They make pocket-sized ultrasounds now. In fact, I've been thinking about setting up a portable ultrasound at the mall and just doing gender reveals for, $100 a pop. How easy would that be? And make them sign a waiver that you're not guaranteeing, the gender, but you give them some pictures of it or whatever. That's another thing that's kind of popping up on the coasts, is gender reveals with eye butterflies, the $2,000 ultrasound transducer that plugs into your iPhone. So I hope that answers your question, VJ, about the mobile x-ray business. I also helped start a mobile mammography business or modality at one of the bigger hospitals I worked at here in Idaho. We acquired an RV. It was retrofitted with some 2D technology for mammo. I set up locations to travel to. I did studies to find out, how many we think we could serve in these underpopulated areas, and bring the exams back to our hospital and have the radiologist read it, and we would catch more cancer that way, blah, blah, blah. So if you're interested in either one of those, let me know. I still have business proposals and stuff on all that stuff. So I hope that's been helpful. Where are we at? We got to be hitting the 1 hour mark by now. Shouldn't have closed that page, huh? I'll send VJ an email with a link to this video. Any other questions from the folks on at the time? if you want to help support the channel, I've never really mentioned this, but if you want to help support the channel, hey, there's Mr. Allen, and Get Rich Jr. with a link to this video. I've never mentioned it, but a little stream of income that I get is from Amazon. If you were to go to my blog and click on any of my links to take you to Amazon, there'd be an affiliate ID that attaches to your purchase, and I would get a small pennies usually of the purchase. But throughout the year, it probably brings in several $100s that helps me pay for hosting and all these kinds of things. Just this new Streamlabs that I'm using here to kind of control the presentation is about $20 a month. So if you're going to buy something on Amazon, consider stopping by my blog and using one of my links. They're all over the place, really, but if you go to, I think I have a gear page where I talk about buying resources. Don't forget to like and subscribe on the video. Under resources, Best Tech Gear. This is all stuff that I've found and ordered from on Amazon. If you go through any one of those, it'll shoot me an affiliate sale, so that'd be awesome. I would appreciate that. But it looks like we got a few more questions popping up. Mr. Allen, what you missed was I got on and answered another question from email about starting a mobile x-ray business. That's what I just talked about. And earlier in the broadcast, I answered Allison's questions that you might be able to see further up in the chat about different personalities for different modalities. Do certain personalities fit certain modalities? Get Rich Jr., instead of doing x-ray, can you just go straight into MRI? Yep, we've talked about that. That's a new thing. That didn't used to be a thing, and us older techs used to get irritated at any mention of that because we were forced to go to x-ray school first. And I mentioned that earlier in this broadcast. Where I went to ultrasound school, you had to be an x-ray tech first. But you don't have to do that anymore. There's no point in it, really. So you can walk straight into x-ray, straight into ultrasound. You can walk straight into nuclear medicine. You can walk straight into MRI. The problem with it walking straight into MRI is you've got to find a place that will give you enough clinical hours. Because x-ray school is not like, MRI school is not like x-ray school. X-ray school is 2 years with like 1,800 hours of clinical rotations. MRI is like a 2-week program where they cram a bunch of information in you that allows you to sit for the boards. But if you pass the boards for MRI and go get hired and don't know what you're doing, you're going to lose your job real fast. So you have to make sure you get good, solid, quality clinical rotations under your belt. If you're a good fake it till you make it kind of person, go for it. You might be able to pull it off, but if you're not, you're going to need to understand how to do the exams. Because when I would interview technologists, I would ask them to walk me through exams. Tell me how you would do an IVP, or tell me how you would do a bone survey, or tell me how you would do, whatever. In ultrasound, I'd bring in an employee and have them scan because there's no radiation involved there, right? I can't ask them to take x-rays of employees and show them you know what you're doing. But in ultrasound, I'd bring employees in and say, scan the gallbladder, scan the liver, scan the thyroid, whatever, and show me that they know what they're doing. So yeah, if that's what you want to do, Rich, jump straight into MRI. Don't even bother with x-ray school. The cons would be if you get sick of MRI, there's nowhere else to go. Whereas if you started with x-ray first, and then you go to MRI, you get sick of MRI, you go back to x-ray, and you already have the license. But you may not ever get sick of MRI. Certainly you won't get sick of the pay. I promise you that. So, I think I've answered just about everything. And I've got some other stuff I got to get going on. So, I'll wrap it up here. Thanks for stopping by the channel. And hit the like button if you haven't already. I'm considering doing these lunches on a more frequent basis. I'm just trying to figure out how to fit this into my schedule because I enjoy doing them. I enjoy talking to everybody. I think it's helpful is the feedback I'm getting. And I wish I could do, every morning from 8 to 10, but there's just too much stuff going on every day. And same with weekends. Weekends always seem to have last minute games to go to, and and things like that. So, and thanks to Ashton for subscribing. I see that on the screen now. What do you think would be a good schedule? When would you, I mean, does it really matter if you catch me live, or is it just about catching it on a replay and hearing the information? What I liked about these types of deals was when I was commuting, like when I lived in Phoenix and had to drive an hour to work, I would listen to this kind of stuff on my drive, so it didn't really matter to me if it was live or not, as long as I had access to it. So maybe it doesn't matter so much about when I post it, although that would limit you on being able to interact through the comments section. So I don't know. Let me know what you think. Thanks for stopping by, and have the good rest of your week. We'll talk to you later.